Brewing Inc. is now syndicated on SeriousWriter.com. See them at SeriousWriter.com for resources, articles, videos, topical classes, and now a podcast, the Brewing Inc. Podcast, because we're syndicated on SeriousRider.com.
Welcome back, faithful listeners, to part 2 of our Interbrew review of The Witcher.
Spoiler filled.
Yeah, we didn't tell them that in the last one.
Well, it's going to be on the title, so yeah. They'll know.
Yeah. So this episode is going to revolve around what happened in episodes 5, 6, 7, and 8, and then also what we know to be happening within the books and what we know to be happening in the games, and maybe we'll talk about some of the love triangle stuff and yada, yada, yada.
Yeah. But I don't think they're going to get into as much of the love triangle. I'm just going to say that right at the outset.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like that's where they're going with this.
No. So, in the Netflix series, let's just go ahead and get into that. In the Netflix series, it doesn't seem like they're doing it yet or much. No. Like, they've introduced Triss Marigold, and they've introduced Yennefer.
Yeah. And by the way, we didn't go over that in the last episode. Triss was a big part of the episode with the Striga.
Yes.
And she was a cool character.
Yes.
And you get this kind of a little bit of sexual tension, but really they're just co-workers.
What happens within the game realm, to give you the background information of Geralt and their relationship, is that she starts off as when you're introduced to her, she's the sorceress of a prolific kingdom, so she's well off, she's got resources, she's this well-to-do character, and she's interested in Geralt, and there's, sexual tension, all that, but he's already interested in Yennefer, and they already have their relationship going on. Well, as he's trying to do this thing to save Cirilla, or, keep her safe, he ends up losing his memories. And she takes advantage of that and starts a relationship with him without telling him, like, hey, you're already kind of involved with this other lady, Yennefer. She takes advantage of the fact that they're kind of together and he's lost his memory and she's always liked him and now she has this opportunity and chance. And so they have this whole kind of relationship. Yeah, and this is all, I think, the second game. They have this whole relationship thing, and then he ends up getting his memories back.
Yeah.
And so then they kind of break apart, and he's going to pursue Yennefer again because she's off doing her thing, and he's trying to find her. And so in the third game, you are reintroduced to Triss, and now she's lost her position as this powerful sorceress to this kingdom, and so she's kind of just making it on her own, and so it gives her this almost authentic character to her character, where like now she is just acting out of self-preservation and like she's not this haughty kind of character, but she's still like, hey, I've got feelings for you and whatnot. And so it ended up being up to you as the player to decide who should Geralt fall in love with and pursue. Should he go with Triss? Because he really does seem almost more happy with her. Like, she seems to love him on a level. They work together better. Yeah. Whereas Yennefer is this sort of self-centered, self-absorbed character, and she sort of gives Geralt a hard time, almost very motherly at times, like chastising him about things, but they work well together on another level, which we'll get into that with the whole genie and the curse and everything. But you're left to pick one or the other. And so you don't really get that in the Netflix series, and it doesn't look like they're going that route. I don't know if season 2...
It doesn't really look like it. Yeah. I mean, they could, obviously, right? I mean, there is so much material to pull from. Yeah. From the games and the books. And again, I'm just getting into the books, and I would like to read more. Yeah. Because I'm really enjoying the first one. So let's get into episode 5.
So that sets up...
that sets up the
djinn.
Yeah. So, first comment on episode 5.
He
finds this genie really easily to me.
He's like scouring the bottom of this swamp and like, oh, hey, here it is.
Oh, there it is. Like, obviously.
And he has Jaskier with him.
Right.
Like, probably not the best person to have around. I mean, I guess they're always together. And
yeah. I get why it can't happen. You can't take a whole lot of time with that part of the story.
Yeah.
But I just remember even watching it the first time going, well, that happened pretty, like, you can just find a genie that easy? Like, like the 3 wishes and the whole thing?
Apparently he already knew where to look. Yeah.
So they didn't really do as good of a job to me with the background of that. Explaining how does he know, and how did he get to know, and why does he need the genie,
and the whole thing with like they accidentally release it, and so
accidentally. Like this Witcher is like super fighter guy, but Jaskier can just be like, no, I'm not going to give it to you. Like again, like that whole exchange was it was a little convoluted to me.
And I think it was at the expense of trying to be comical.
You're right.
So maybe a little bit not as strong writing, but
right in that beginning. But then they set up the problem, which is
he's been cursed.
He's been
Jaskier.
Something happens with Jaskier's voice and his throat.
His throat is swelling up,
throwing up blood and all this stuff. So again, we see that Geralt really does kind of like this guy.
Right. There's a spark of humanity that's kind of... spark of humanity
is like, well...
he's concerned.
Look, I'm not going to let you die.
Yeah.
Like, let's go figure this out. And so he takes him to the next town and tries to find a doctor. Healer. He gets a healer. Yeah. And again, we get into this whole thing where Yennefer, after the whole thing with the baby, now Yennefer is obviously... kind of independent, and which I like. Again, they showed it. Like, it's just as a writer, I'm noticing more and more when people do this well.
Yeah,
in books and in movies, I'm like, you didn't tell me that she's independent. You just showed me she is.
Yeah,
like she's going to some backwoods, backdoor kind of mage guy where he's selling all these ingredients and whatever, you know what I mean? Like, and he's like, oh, it costs more now. And like, you get this kind of corrupt, almost mafia type thing happening. Anyway, I just liked it. I really think that they did a great job with Yennefer.
And I think the previous episode when she wasn't able to save that baby, I think that started her on sort of the spiral of like being like, wait, there's something here that I'm wanting and I'm desiring and I can't have it.
It gave her a new goal.
Yeah.
And that's something that, again, as writers, we have to understand. If we're going to have a character last, sometimes you have to give them new goals.
Right. They got to grow somehow.
They got to grow. You got to give them new goals. They got to realize new things. And that's why sequels, I think, are so difficult for people. Is because you have to give them a new goal.
Yeah, set something up new for them. They can't be the same.
Right. It can't be like...
They can't be destroying the Death Star again for the 5th time.
Right. And so once we get to Bottled Appetites in episode 5, you get the gin, and this is the first time that the Witcher and Yennefer finally meet. And again, it was kind of an unnecessary little orgy scene.
Right. Yeah.
Like, they could have done that in a different way.
Right.
But they did show that this mayor was going to, like, arrest her, and she's like, yeah, we'll see about that. You know, and, like, where she's really taking control.
Yeah.
Just, again, showing us that she's powerful. She's a powerful mage.
She's making do on her own. Rather than being with the Brotherhood of the Sorceresses. She's like, you know what? I'm just going to be a local healer. I'm going to give these guys boner potions.
Yeah.
And make a living that way.
And so we get the first kind of interaction between them. She's really interested because he's immune to her.
Right.
Like, she's a challenge
he
in a way.
He sees through her illusions,
stuff.
Yeah.
And so, but because of this desire for her to have a baby, and we get this other scene with Tisea coming back in, kind of giving her an opportunity to come back.
Right. you find out there's something more there. Like, Tisea has always been a little more invested in Yennefer, and you don't really know why, because Yennefer always seems to either despise her or almost fail her expectations in a way, and yet Tisea is always willing to give her another chance, give her another opportunity, whereas like the other girls, she's turned into eels and was done with them.
Right, yeah.
But there's some sort of connection there that she's made, because I guess she realizes like this girl is more powerful than she knows herself.
Right. And that she believed in Yennefer.
Yeah.
And she believed in Yennefer in a way that maybe Yennefer didn't believe in herself.
Yeah.
And so, again, they show it was a conversation, so some of that was said, but not all of it was said.
Yeah.
You get the context of what was said.
Yeah.
Again, it's just good writing.
Yeah.
But when she finds out that there's a genie involved, she's like, "Oh, I'll help you.
This is an opportunity.
I'll just do this for your good company."
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like, but they all think that Jaskier is the one with the wishes.
Right.
They all think that Jaskier is the one with the wishes because
he had said
something.
He had broken the vessel and set the genie
He broken
free.
the vessel. He started shouting wishes.
Yeah.
But it was really
Geralt
who
in there arguing.
had the wishes, because he was like, I just want some peace and quiet.
Yes.
Right?
And then that's when the genie's like, okay, I'll take away this guy's voice.
Yeah.
Because he's obviously the one that's causing the disturbance.
But again, you get that sort of misdirection in the writing, which it was okay. It was good. But really the episode was centered around this issue of Yennefer and the Witcher getting together and becoming more than friends, and just this whole so she is going to become like this vessel for the genie. She wants what's his name, Jaskier, to say a wish, and she thinks he does, to say the third wish,
right? So that the genie will be freed.
She wants to be the vessel, and Geralt knows that this is going to kill her,
right?
Like no human can take this,
right?
And so,
but the reason she's doing it is because of this new desire that we're seeing as viewers, is that she wants to undo the curse of not being able to bear children. So she wants to keep her beauty,
right?
But now she's convinced there's something I can do to give this back to me. She's like, it can't be unattainable. She's like, there's got to be a way. I can figure something out.
Anything's possible.
So she thinks controlling the genie is going to be a way for her to accomplish that. She goes through the whole ritual. She's got the uterus lines all drawn on her and everything.
And she's naked a lot in this episode.
Yeah, very much so.
Which is part of it, obviously. I don't know why that's necessary all the time. Here's one thing I think is funny. It's not really good writing, by the way. Is every time you turn around, somebody's telling Geralt he needs a bath.
Right. He smells or he's bloody.
They're like, you need some new clothes. You need a bath. And and that's just a way to get, what's his name, shirt off, I think.
Right.
And then this chick to get naked. I mean, like, I just, there's no real story reason why they need this.
In the Witcher game, there's a very well-known scene of him just in the bathtub already, like with Yennefer in the room as well. So it's a classic scene from the game as well. So that's why I think they kept playing on that in the story in the Netflix series.
Yeah.
So there's that whole thing. It's in this episode where she gets him in the bath finally, right?
She gets him in the bath and then blah blah blah. But there's no sex yet.
Right.
But in order to save her life, he realizes it's him who's doing the wishes, because, by the way, she does manipulate him in the end and like puts him under some sort of sleep or something.
Right.
And he goes on some sort of rage and does her bidding kind of thing. And then he's in the jail cell with the elf guy, the Dr. Elf guy. And he says, I just wish you'd explode or something. Like, that's all I want.
Yeah.
Well, that's my last dying breath. I just, kind of a screw you kind of moment. And the guy literally does.
Boom.
And the doctor's like, I guess you're the one who actually got the wishes.
Yeah.
And so he realizes that she's going to die and she can't control this genie. And so he makes a wish. And in that episode, they don't tell you what the wish was.
Right.
But
and that's the big thing is, even in the books, they don't tell you what it is that he wishes. You just know that it has something to do with interlocking their two fates together. That
right.
her fate is now intertwined with his fate.
Well, in the story, in the show, they do. They kind of do tell us what the wish was, but
sort of, but not exactly. Yeah.
But I guess I don't know about the books or the movie.
Yeah,
I remember
or the game.
Is it in the game too about the wish and everything?
Exactly. Yeah. So all that is very canon between the books and the game and the show, but it's still a very elusive, or it's not chronicled exactly what he says.
Okay, he never tells you exactly.
Yeah.
So. Now, of course, there's this whole sex thing.
Right, after the genie leaves, then their attraction.
Now they're together, and so that's pretty important to the whole story.
Yeah.
And again,
speculation.
Right.
I think he said something along the lines of, she has to live to help me raise my child. To an extent, something along that line of, because after that wish is made, from that point, Geralt, Ciri, and Yennefer's, all their paths are very, very closely intertwined.
Okay.
And then that's when Yennefer starts kind of taking on Ciri as a surrogate child.
Okay.
And so, I mean, this is further on down the line, but that's what a lot of people speculated. It has something to do with, he knew he had this child of surprise, and he knew, or Yennefer's wish to have her own child.
Yeah.
And he knew that he had to say something along the lines to save her life and have it be intertwined with his own fate, his own destiny.
Yeah. And by the way, kudos again to the show.
Yeah.
Of keeping that goal in mind.
Yes.
People saying it to him dreaming about it. I mean, they do a good job bringing that idea back. That the girl in the woods, she's your destiny. Whatever the storyline is of that episode.
Yeah.
Like they bring it back. I mean, obviously with the last episode with the banquet and he gets the child surprise and all that stuff. I mean, obviously, but they keep bringing it back every episode in some way, and it's not forced, in my opinion.
Right.
I mean, they did a good job of bringing it back in. So just kudos to the writing in that.
Yeah.
Now, while I do think the Dryad story was filler episode material, and here's why. Okay, so at the end of episode 4, she like drinks that water and is like, and like nothing happens to her, and then they make her drink the sap from this cool tree or something.
Yeah.
And then she's like in like this whole other realm with this magical tree. Nothing happens.
Right.
Like
Nothing's
the next thing you
revealed.
know is they're like, oh, now we figured out the tree had to tell us she's a princess. Like,
Right.
that would have been a great time to give us some more information about who she is.
No, basically they're just like, oh, okay, you don't mean any harm to the forest. You have no ill will towards us.
Yeah,
okay,
right.
okay, we'll let you go.
We're good now.
We're
She's
good.
just hanging out.
Yeah, we got your motive. Okay.
Yeah, so that to me was weak. But I really did like the whole Doppler story.
Yes.
Of, like, where they realized, look, an army's not going to get her back. We know where she is, but an army's not going to get her back.
We got to send someone that she
The
trusts.
Nilfgaardians are figuring it out.
Yeah.
And they're like, look, we're going to have to figure out something else. So they do the Doppler guy, who is like so freaky, man. I mean, like, that dude is so weird.
Yeah.
It makes me so uncomfortable, but like in a good way, like not in a good way, but like in a way of like, you want a character that does that,
right?
Like, you like that character should do that,
yeah.
And
he takes on the form of Mousing.
He takes on
who Ciri doesn't know he's dead,
and then he kills him.
Yeah.
And then it's just this really like, I like the fact that. And I like the fact that they didn't draw it out. That even within that same episode, they figure... oh, no, it's the next episode. But like at the end of the episode, he's like, hey, I'm here. I'm going to take you to... You know, I know you need to find the Witcher. Let's go.
Right.
And so So at the end of that episode 5, she leaves the forest, which I liked that was how they did it. Mm-hmm. Again, I thought they could have done so much more with the dryads and in that forest. Again, I don't know the books, but I'm sure there's a lot that happens with them and who their world is and all that stuff.
Yeah, it seemed from the Netflix episode's point of view that was a unneeded set of characters and scenario.
Yeah.
Like, it just kind of went nowhere, but my guess is it has more of a tie-in to the books where
that's what I think.
You would go, oh, that's that whole scene.
Yeah. Or just pulling those characters in because they're really important in the books. They talk about it even in the first book.
Dryads,
kind of as a separate... They don't go there yet, at least that I've read. But all that to say is, I think they could have done a lot more with that. Some of that writing was weak to me. I mean, they spent a lot of money on special effects for like, she's just a princess. Like, I just really think like they could have done more with the story. But so then we get into a really cool episode to me.
Episode 6.
Episode 6 was so cool.
Rare Species.
And you get this dragon hunting team thing. Yeah, and again, it's another monster of the week,
right?
Kind of thing.
Well, it's funny because like Jaskier's kind of dragging Geralt into this thing, and Geralt's like, this is not. I don't want to be a part of this. This is not me. And then Yennefer walks in, and he's like, "Wait a minute, is she going on this hunt?" And they're like, "Yeah, she's with this other group." And he's like, "I'm in."
Yeah, but there's this one guy. Bolch, what's his name? Borch, and his two like chick. These chicks were like Grace Jones, and if you don't know who Grace Jones was, she was an actress and an artist in the 80s. Mm-hmm. And that's okay if you don't know who she is, but that's just who they reminded me of. So this Borch guy, and he recruits Geralt, right?
To be on his team. Because this is like a competition.
Yeah.
To find this dragon.
Right. And so he's a little mysterious, this older guy, and he's got the two chicks, and Jaskier keeps trying to like hit on these women, which is pretty funny.
And they give him not the time of day at all. Mm-hmm. They're not impressed. And really the only reason Geralt takes on the quest, he found out Yennefer is going to be a part of it. And so Geralt's trying to talk to Yennefer while they're going on the thing, while Jaskier's trying to talk to these ladies, and everyone's kind of intermingling within the teams, but they also know that they're sort of competing against each other. And there was this other group who were dwarves that were also a part of the
Now the dwarves, the head guy in the dwarves, and I forget his name, but he was in the first book that I've been reading. So this second time through that I'm watching, I'm like, oh, like he's in the first book as someone that The Witcher meets back up with again, and they have a history.
Yes, and so they found a knight that was dead.
Yeah, the knight got the runs for some reason.
They all kind of end up needing each other to get past certain parts of this competition.
But yeah, so they're all on this quest, and again, it was like a monster of the week. But at the same time, they really incorporated it into a story,
right?
Which I thought was well done. And of course, in this one, there's more of an interaction, long term, over days with Yennefer, and the Witcher, and the dwarves try to take him on this shortcut, and Borch and his ladies fall,
right, because the bridge gives way, and they're kind of being like, rather than take everyone, we'll sacrifice ourselves, sort of thing. Like they fall to their death,
right?
Well, he falls, and then the ladies are like, we're going with him,
and so that kind of sets up this introspective moment for the Witcher, and Jaskier comes up to him and is like, hey, you did all you could. He's trying to be his friend. And that really kind of motivates the Witcher to be like, you know what? Life is short.
Yeah, I need to make amends with
I need
Yennefer.
to make it clear that I really like Yennefer, you know. So he goes into her tent. It's this magical tent. It's bigger on the inside. All that stuff.
Very Harry Potter.
Yeah. And so we get this nice love scene and moment, but then when they come back out of the tent, the dwarves are gone, and it comes to light that Yennefer wants the dragon because she believes that
it can restore the heart of the dragon.
The heart of the dragon
can restore her ability for childbearing.
So anyway, they get to the dragon, and the dragon's wounded, and they figure out why the dragon's been attacking, because the dragon can't move because there's an egg. And and again, like I said,
the dragon's dead. They find the dragon dead.
Oh, okay, the dragon's dead.
But T and V, the two chicks are there guarding the egg, and you're like, hold up, y'all just fell to your death.
Yeah.
What are you doing here? And then that's when it's revealed that this golden dragon comes down to like guard these eggs as well, and golden dragons are super rare,
or impossible. Even Geralt is like, oh yeah, no, those don't exist. That's just a myth.
That's just a myth.
Like that's impossible. And which again was a good setup. Like they set it up earlier.
Yeah.
And now here's
and you have the guy that would be considered the expert in the field saying, that's not possible. Those don't exist. It's a myth. And then boom, golden dragon's there. And so then you're like, well, what's going on here? And it's revealed that the guy Borsch that had hired Geralt, he didn't hire him to find the egg to take it, but he hired him to protect the egg against these people that were hunting it down, because he is the dragon after all. Borsch is the golden dragon.
Yeah.
And so then you get this twist on its head at the end, and Geralt's like, okay, if this is what you hired me to do, then let's do it. I'm going to fight all these guys and protect this egg.
Yeah. And I don't know where all these guys came from, by the way.
Right.
I'm like, I thought there was like 4 of these dudes, these Reaver guys.
Yeah, there were 4 teams total.
And, well, there was 4 teams total, but there weren't that many Reavers.
Right.
Originally. Oh, by the way, in this episode was a really heartbreaking, brutal scene where that creature comes out of the woods and it's starving. And Geralt is like, oh, he's just hungry.
Yeah.
And the knight that like has the runs, ends up having the runs, is all like takes him out.
Yeah, he's like, I am a knight, I protect people and
for kingdom and glory or whatever he says. What a heartbreaking little moment.
Right, just chop the thing down.
Geralt was like, if we would have fed him, he would have just went away.
Yeah.
But it's such a commentary on human nature.
Yeah.
And it really resonates, I think, with people. Like that sometimes we get so full of our own causes and our own belief system
labeling others as a problem or a monster or the enemy without any just provocation.
And not realizing that they may just be hungry.
Right.
Like the solution might just be a really simple moment of kindness instead of... Anyway, I just thought it was heartbreaking and dark and all of that stuff that it was so fit with the whole theme of the show and the tone of the show.
Yeah.
But anyway, all that to say is at the end, there's this big fight scene, and again, I don't know where all these guys come from.
right.
It's a little weak writing.
Cannon fodder.
Yeah. And
and then the red shirts show up.
But then Yennefer and the Witcher are fighting together, and they're both awesome. And then the two Grace Joan ladies are awesome.
Yeah.
And all this stuff happens, and you get to see the golden dragon burn up this guy, and all this stuff happens. But then it's everybody wins, yay.
Yeah.
And then we get the yes but moment. Which is they've won, and Borch is alive and he's back. Now he's in his little human form again.
Yeah.
And they're sitting there, and it's revealed that the Witcher had used his wish in a way that makes Yennefer feel like this love thing that they're having isn't a real thing.
Right. It might be tainted a bit.
And that's a great
magically influenced.
Yeah. It's a great yes but moment. as a writer. If you guys have heard us talk about yes but moments,
she's kind of acknowledging, yes, I have feelings for you too.
Yeah,
but are they authentic?
Yeah, and there's a great moment when they're alone in the tent where she says, about being a mother, and she says, I wanted to feel important to somebody. And he ends up telling her, you're important to me.
Yeah.
It's a great little scene. It's a great little moment, very well written. But then you get this moment of, is this even real? And of course, with all of her background, they've done a good job setting up that she, of course, would believe.
Deep trust. Yeah.
For Marks and now this guy Istrid is betrayed her and blah 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 blah, all this stuff. And so really obviously you can't have a happy ever after ending right there, right? Yeah, but it was well done. I thought it was really well done. And then he turns on Jaskier because Jaskier tries to say something and he just lays into the guy.
Yeah.
He goes, if life could bless me with one thing or whatever, it would be that I'd never see you again or something. Like, you would just leave me alone. You're always around when all this awful stuff happens.
Right.
Like, blaming him, and it's not his fault.
Right.
But again, that totally makes sense, right? Because he's really angry at the whole situation. He's not really mad at this guy. So, anyway, overall, it was a great episode. But we also get
a little bit of Ciri.
The whole thing with Ciri, where she figures out that this guy is not real. And then there was a really interesting scene there towards the end where the knight with the black feather.
Okay, yeah.
Where the Doppler, Ciri escapes from the Doppler, figures out this isn't really Mousat.
Right.
And Dara and all that stuff. And Silver hurts him and because he's a monster and all that kind of stuff. And then there's this really weird kind of thing where Kahir is waiting and he thinks it's Ciri, but it's really the Doppler. And the Doppler's like, look, you didn't tell me who she is. And then there's this like fight scene between them, which is kind of cool. And it was this really interesting moment of us getting to know the villain a little bit more.
Right.
And
getting to know his motives and abilities.
Yeah. So that was kind of cool. But anyway.
And Dara ends up freeing the real Ciri, but leaving her to kind of be on her own again. He doesn't like bring her back. He doesn't.
No, he's like, look, man, I'm just going to get killed if I hang around with you.
Yep.
And the
Kahir and Fringilla, they're kind of also mentioned again. Like they show you like these guys are making their moves essentially to start taking over the rest of the realms and spreading the whole Nilfgaardian forces. And Fringilla is more on the side of these elves than she is on the side of the Brotherhood of the Sorcerers.
Yep.
And so you're starting to see like how she's been not brainwashed but indoctrinated more so to be on their side and use her abilities for that than what she's originally established to be, which is more like a control point. Like they're supposed to be able to control all these politics through this brotherhood, and she ends up being more of a wild card in the whole setup.
Yep.
And that brings us to
episode 7,
Before a Fall,
which is now we're getting the timelines getting closer together. We're getting Nilfgaard trying to, on its way to take Sintra, which again we see in the first episode,
right?
Because it's kind of like the Titanic. We know this is going to happen,
right?
But Geralt is like, hey, I'm going to go get this kid. Like it's time.
Yeah.
Like I see the danger. I'm the only one that can protect this kid.
Yeah.
He's convinced finally, and then there's this whole drama of they put him in jail. They try to trick him or something at first. Something happens where they try to trick him, and anyway, they end up putting him in jail.
And you, as a viewer, know, this is hearkening back to episode 1 and 2,
right?
When the whole infiltration happens, when the siege happens, and you're like, oh, he was there.
He was there.
And that's why Mousek in, I think, episode 1, towards the end, comes in and said he's escaped.
He's escaped. He's not here
there.
anymore.
He's not here anymore.
He tries to go get him.
Yeah. to basically protect Cirilla, and then that's when they realized, oh, this is not an option anymore. And then you as a viewer is going, oh, they were talking about Geralt, and he was there the whole time.
Yep. And so that's all going on, and obviously, the Witcher escapes in this episode, and of course you're just watching it going, oh my gosh, right? Of course something's got to happen because they don't get together in the first episode, and she's kind of going around
and her
looking for him.
Her grandmother, Calanthe, she tries to trick the Witcher into thinking, she tried to give him a fake Ciri.
Yeah.
And he's like, this is not her. So that's before he gets in prison, but like they were trying to trick him scenario, and so he knows like something is up. Like they're not being truthful with him, and yet there's now this serious threat is happening, and he's starting to realize like, oh, this all has something to do with the fact that I've been ignoring my destiny, my quote unquote
his legacy, his destiny. And he was told by Borch in the last episode, that's towards the end of the episode, he goes, look, you know what you need to do. Yeah. And you're just trying to escape it.
Right.
And so, again, it was a good episode. It was a good moving forward. Even though it was kind of a Monster of the Week thing, it still moved him forward.
Yeah.
And it moved the story forward, it moved Yennefer forward. And in episode 7 is kind of a setup episode for episode 8 in a lot of ways, especially with the Brotherhood, because with this battle going on, they're like, what are we going to do?
Right.
We're just going to let this happen? Yeah. And so there's all this politics going on, and what are they going to do? And this kind of group of mages goes rogue a little bit from the Brotherhood and was like, no, we're going to try to defend Sintra and all this stuff. We're going to try to defend all this stuff. And so they're setting up for the Battle of Sodden, right? Or Sodden Hill or something.
Yeah. And so, 7 really is a prelude to episode 8.
Yes.
Like 7 is a lot of setup. They show you a little bit of what's to be expected on one side and what's to be expected on the other side. And you're like, okay, wow, these factions who were supposed to sort of be together, they really are at ends and at odds with each other at this point. Like, even with the whole, like, Geralt just wanted to protect Ciri, but they thought he was there. Like, they assumed his motive was to take her, and that's why they try to trick him and all that. It was like, all of this, the motives being either misconstrued or at end with each other, like even within the Brotherhood of the Sorceresses, like they were supposed to be working together, and now they're like, oh, Frangilla is like way out there, and they realize like the threat is greater than what they had anticipated originally.
Yeah.
And so that sets up episode 8. Was there anything else from episode 7 that?
Well, Ciri again they just keep finding ways for her to have a story in every episode. Like, I really think that's kind of a weakness of the show, is they're not really giving her something to do. She just keeps running away and finding herself in these other situations,
right? And
then running away and finding herself in other situations. Like there's not really a growth point for her yet. Right. I really hope they get to it in like season 2 or something.
Well, yeah. But and from the games, if you played the games, you know that Ciri grows up to be an extraordinary badass. Like,
yeah.
She's just got power that no one else has, and she's the only female that's been trained as a Witcher and all that. So you do know that kind of where she's going if you're familiar with the books and the games.
Well, that's where the books start out. Book 1 starts out with her. She's already being trained as a Witcher at age 12 or something.
Yep.
And so and there's a lot of discussion about what are they going to do? Are they going to mutate her? Or they just let her be trained and all this stuff. And so I don't know where it goes yet in the books, but all that to say is, so we kind of know where it's going.
Yeah.
And I really hope they take her there.
Yeah.
Because I think some of the speculation online is that they aren't going to take her there.
Oh, okay.
But I really hope they end up doing that, because obviously when we get to episode 8, again, there's more stuff about her powers, but again, it's kind of redundant to me. Like, it's like, well, we got to show her because she's the other end of this timeline that we're getting together in the goal. So we got to show something. But I really think that they just kind of had to come up with some stuff for her to do in every episode. And it just kind of, it weakened, in my opinion, some of the episodes
a little bit.
But so we were setting up for the big battle scene. In episode 8.
Yes.
Which is
much more.
It was a great episode. It needed the setup. I don't mind the setup of episode 7. I don't mind good setup. Like, if you're going to set something up, like, that's life, right? You're going to make plans, and then all the plans go to crap, right? Exactly. I mean, in episode 8, but that's what happens. And so
one of the things that really stuck with me for episode 8 was the realization of sacrifice. Like, what it takes for these sorceresses to do these grandiose spells or magic casting, and the sacrifice that it takes. And they did show this before. They showed this through Yennefer's training back in episode 2 and 3 and 4, that magic just doesn't come out of nowhere. There's always a price.
There's a cost or
There's
whatever.
A cost. And they showed that through, like, this girl, casting a spell, and unbeknownst to her, the cost was that her hand shrivels up. And so you realize, okay, yes, they're powerful, but the power is going to come from something. And they had been trained to be able to harness, like, flowers and wither the flowers so that they could do this spell or that. And so it's shown in this episode 8, that Fringilla she has some sorceresses herself that are under her command, and she's basically having them sacrifice their whole person, their body, in order to be these huge, like, lobs of energy that go against the defensive that they have set up around, the magical defenses they have set up around the city. And so you're kind of like, whoa, that's a huge cost for the price that they're willing to pay to win this, to get into the city and get at Ciri. And I think that was really shown really well within this episode.
I think that again, we see some of Ciri's power because, like, she kind of reacts, because she's in danger and she reacts, and then kills all these people, and like, and so, but then she's picked up by this guy, and it happened to be the same guy that the Witcher comes into contact with, because all these, like, undead, not really zombies, they're like ghouls or something.
Neckers, I think.
And he's got to fight him, but he's bitten, and
he gets bit,
and all this stuff.
It's
So interesting thing about episode 7, there wasn't a monster of the week, from what I remember, in episode 7. There wasn't, like, some monster that he had to fight at some point. But now we're back in episode 8, and he's got these, like, zombies, undead kind of things happening. That he's got to fight in the ground, and it's just, like, really weird, and he gets bitten. And so he ends up being taken care of by somebody, doesn't he?
It's a woman. I think it's just some random woman that she had met earlier.
Oh yeah. And then this is the episode where it was really interesting to me that they took the time to do this. They go into this whole thing about his mom. And his mother leaving him.
She was a sorceress.
Taking him to the Witchers or whatever happened. And again, just letting us into more of his story. Letting us into more of his background and who he is. And I didn't say this earlier in the last episode. I really should have. I almost didn't watch The Witcher in the middle of the first episode. His voice bothered me.
Okay.
Like, I don't know if it's that way in the game. Like if he was trying to do the voice from the game, or they were trying to do that.
Maybe. He did say he played a lot of the game to get himself into character because he liked the game. But I don't even
think... I think the voice was a voiceover in a lot of it, just because, like,
other people have said that too. They said within the first couple episodes, they couldn't understand what they were saying. They had to put on subtitles to understand what was going on.
Yeah, I totally did. And really, it was so forced to me. Like, his voice just didn't even seem real. Like, it didn't sound like a real character. Like, it seemed so forced.
Almost like Christian Bale in the Batman series.
Right, yeah. And so it got better as the show went on.
Yeah.
But all that to say is by episode 8, there's this big battle scene, but at the same time that there's this big battle scene, you've got these individual things happening with Ciri going to this farmer people, and then the Witcher. The guy saves the Witcher. The game goes by and saves the Witcher, but she's left already, and it's a little not really convoluted, but they're kind of drawing it out.
Right. So like the Witcher is with the wife, and the guy is with Ciri. So the husband is with Ciri, and then they find out, no,
it was the other way around. Ciri was with the wife.
Yeah.
And then the guy goes back for the Witcher because he saved his life, and he's like, he was bitten, and he was like, look,
that's right. And he's in the back of his cart driving back. And so you as a viewer are like, oh, they're going to cross paths, and then they just miss each other.
It was a little frustrating.
Yeah. And then finally you get the reveal, the scene of what's been prophesied from Triss and from Renfear. He meets the girl in the woods.
Well, first of all, the battle. Just to say, the battle was really well done, in my opinion. There was betrayal, there was sorcery stuff with like manipulating people to be killing behind the scenes. And, there's all this kind of stuff that happened.
Yennefer sucks in all this power and just fire bombs.
Oh my gosh, area. It was so cool.
It was so epic.
So I thought they did a good job with the battle because battle scenes to me are really difficult to do well because you really have to have both individual goals and individual stories within this giant thing. And you have to have dynamics, and it's got to be back and forth.
Chaos. It's within chaos. Yeah.
And so, anyway, they did a really good job with the battle scene. But then you finally get, which again makes it good writing, in my opinion, because if they had gotten to the end of episode 8 or the end of the first season and didn't get Ciri and the Witcher together, I would have been pissed. I would have been like, really?
Like, why?
That's just cheap. Because some shows do crap like that. Like, there's so much more to tell. Go ahead and get them together. Now, in the first book, they're already together.
Yeah.
So Ciri and the Witcher are already together.
Right.
And she's already being trained. And so some of this backstory is probably told in some of these later books.
One of the other books, yeah.
Like, it looks like Sword of Destiny, just the Last Wish, like some of this, some of this backstory is from some of these other books that I haven't read yet. So all that to say is, they did a good job setting up the goal, like we talked about in the last podcast in episode 1. They set up the goal, they set up the characters, and even though they kind of had to convolute a lot of the stuff that Ciri was going through.
Right.
To get her to episode 8, I thought once you kind of made the adjustment in episode 3 that the timelines were different, it worked. Yeah. It really did work. And so then by the time you get to episode 8, now I think episode 8 was interesting because he wasn't really looking for her.
Right.
He was looking for Yennefer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like he thought, he was trying to go save Yennefer.
Yep.
Like he was trying to, he realized she's in the middle of this battle. And by the way, we didn't go all into it with episode 7, but there was some really interesting character development again with Yennefer. She's this time Tissaia or whatever her name is like, no, I'm just begging you. We need you.
That's right.
I'm not your teacher anymore. I'm telling you, we need you.
Yeah.
Please come. And so there's all this character development that happens, and I'm just keep going back to it you never get filler with Yennefer.
Right.
In the whole 8 episodes,
there's always a progress.
There's always a progress. There's some filler stuff with The Witcher. There's almost all of its filler stuff with Ciri.
Yeah, they're holding off on her for sure. I think. I think they're doing it because they know that she is going to be the integral character, and so they're trying to establish Yennefer and Geralt through this, but at the same time keeping you in tune with her character, with Ciri. And then we're going to get in season 2, who knows, I'm speculating, but in season 2 we're going to get probably an older Ciri that's now being trained by the Witcher.
Yeah, I mean, I'm speculating too, but I think they're gonna start off in episode 2. It would make sense. Season 2.
Yeah.
It would make sense if they got to where we kind of start off in book 1.
Yeah.
Which is he's got her. Now he's going to train her, and again in book 1, Dandelion or the Bard.
Yeah.
He and the Witcher aren't together anymore, so he's off doing his own thing. Yennefer's off. So it seems like they're setting up a lot of the backstory that you got before book 1, which seems like they talked about in other books.
Yeah.
Anyway, I thought overall the show was really, really well done.
Yes.
I don't know how they could have done it better in the sense of the timeline, because if they had made it way too obvious, it almost would have made it cheesy.
Or if they had gone strictly chronological and given us Yennefer's story and then introduced Geralt and given us Geralt and Yennefer, I don't think it would have flowed. It wouldn't
have flowed. It wouldn't have been as interesting,
and it wouldn't give us the intrigue that's there between the interplay of knowing what's going to happen in some instances and then going back and seeing what happened versus also seeing the past and then getting to the future and knowing, oh, okay, like this is why this character was established this way, or this is the motivation for, Ciri and Geralt and things like that. But yeah, I think even though it was a little bit confusing and maybe they could have done a better job at deciphering it for the viewer, I think it worked really well.
I think it really worked because I really think that they did overall a really good job with show don't tell.
Yeah.
And I think they just made the decision it's just going to happen.
Yeah.
And maybe people are going to be confused for a second, but they'll catch up.
Yeah.
And really when you think about it, it actually is a reason to me why the show is really popular, is because they didn't talk down to the audience. Yeah. See, when you show and don't tell, you are trusting that the audience is intelligent.
Figure it out. Yeah.
And the audience appreciates that.
Yeah.
Even if you show it in a way that they can't miss it. Right? You still have to write well. You can't hide it and be confusing. It's not about making a mystery for the sake of mystery.
Right.
But when you show and don't tell and you do it well, then it makes the audience feel intelligent.
Or feel like they figured something out on their own.
Yeah.
Even though you showed it to them.
Yeah. But now they're engaged because if they feel lazy if you have to tell them. Mm-hmm. And now they're not engaged. Their brains aren't engaged. Their emotions aren't engaged. And so I don't know how they could have done that part better. I think they could have done better with some of the filler. It was really 1 or 2 parts with The Witcher. And almost every part was not every part, but after episode 1 or 2, there was a lot of parts of her story that were just seemed like filler. They were just kind of waiting to get to the next episode somehow.
Right.
So I like the Doppler stuff. That was kind of cool.
Yeah.
With her
and that is a big part in the books and in the games. In the first game, you can save this Doppler, and if you do, then he becomes the ruler of the city, and then you get to game 3, and they're burning him at the stake because he's been found out as a Doppler.
Oh, wow.
Things like that. So it's cool to see these, that's the monster that he fought at the beginning of game 1, or, that's the beast that you have to track down, for this mission. There's a mission with in the third game with the Baron where he basically is a lot like the Striga episode where you have this creature called a botchling, which is essentially the same thing. Like in childbirth, if it's the mother dies and the baby dies within childbirth and it's not buried correctly, then it becomes this botchling. And so it's nice to see all these nod to these creatures or scenarios from the games or the books that are in the Netflix series, and you go, wow, they took their time to know the world and the realm that
they really did,
doing.
They really
shooting.
did, and really, I think the show, just from what you're saying, and just from my experience reading the books, it was a good crossover of the books and the games.
Yeah,
like it's almost like they took some of the tone from the books, and they took that monster of the week mission kind of thing from the games. Yeah. Because that makes for a great game, right?
Right.
Like, oh, we got to kill this monster. What are the weaknesses? All of that stuff.
Yeah.
And it makes for a good game because you really, from the first book, you don't really get that element. You don't get that monster of the episode sort of element. Maybe it happens later in the books, but obviously it happens probably a lot in the games. And so all that to say is, I think they did a great job of bringing in these two almost different formats of the book and the game, and then making a show about it, and doing their own thing. Like,
so where it's still
they could have really pissed off a lot of people, not really following book one, right. Like, they just really kind of did their own thing. But at the same time, stayed true to the characters, stayed true to the storylines and the basic things. So I think they did a good job, man. I really did.
I enjoyed it. And I just remember watching, like, the battle scene in that last episode and thinking, like, wow, like, where can they take this next season?
Yeah.
And even to the point of thinking, like, yes, I saw it, that they were trying to sort of almost fill this void of like, okay, we know that there are people out there, lots of people that liked Game of Thrones and they watched Game of Thrones. And so now we're going to do The Witcher because it has a lot of that same feel, that same darkness, the same twist, the same kind of war and grittiness. But at the same time, like watching it and going like, man, this final battle scene here is, I would say, as good as the final battle scenes that they had in Game of Thrones. And there's some things in the Game of Thrones battle scenes that I was like, they could have done this better.
Yeah.
And watching The Witcher one, I was like, I appreciated most of those. I wasn't watching it going with a critical eye going, oh, this didn't really work, or oh, it's so dark, it's too dark to see anything. Anyways, I felt like it was a good, like if that was their goal, was to capture those viewers that
absolutely,
I think they hit their mark.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I totally agree, and obviously Game of Thrones kind of opened the door for a lot of that. But really, we are in an amazing time period. We don't need to talk too much about this, but we're in an amazing time period in entertainment where we're getting movie quality entertainment on our TVs.
Right.
Whether that's even some of the major channels still, or a lot of the streaming services are still giving us movie quality, entertainment for just on our TV. Like, there's not as big of a difference, is my point, in the special effects that you get from on a streaming from an HBO or Netflix or Amazon than you get from Star Wars, even like
Lord of the Rings.
Like there's not that really big of a difference to me, and I think it's a pretty amazing time period that we're living in.
For sure. When you can take something campy that really gained a lot of popularity through a video game, and then make it one of the most watched streaming shows. Like, there's something to be said about that. There's a testament to that, of the time that we're living in.
And as writers, especially for those of you who want to do larger stories. So if you are, whatever it might be, even Tom Clancy, right? I mean,
right.
You really have to think about putting together a universe or a world where other people can play in it.
Yeah.
And that's what they've done with The Witcher, obviously Star Wars and Star Trek, Tom Clancy.
Yeah,
it doesn't
Rainbow
just
Six
have to be
series,
science fiction, fantasy. Like what is this? Because if you can build a world where other people can come and play in it, you're going to be set for life,
right?
Basically,
right.
And I think Harry Potter could be that too. I just don't think she's letting people do it, in a sense of. But still, for Harry Potter, there's video games, there's board games, there's
Broadway,
there's still a lot of stuff that she's involved in.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of ways into the world, like we were saying before. Yeah. And I just think it's something for you don't have to do it this way, right? Mm-hmm. You don't have to make every story that you write this big,
episodic,
expansive universe thing. But it's just something to think about as you're building a world.
What is beyond the book?
Well, yeah, what's beyond this book? What's beyond this series? Like, what other characters could people?
Applications could it be enjoyed in?
Yeah, so right now I'm pitching a story that's a prequel to The Living Stone, and it's from a character from the third book,
right?
And there's a lot of people who aren't going to know anything about this character. Mm-hmm. They're going to be fresh to this character.
But it's going to bring them into the world.
It's going to bring them into the world. Mm-hmm. And I built a world in a way, and I remember a lot of people who read the books where it would tell me, they're like the world is so much deeper than you've even shown us. Like they just get a sense that there's history and there's more culture and politics and there's all this other stuff that's going on. They get a sense of it even without me going into the details. And it's because I spent years, literally, not all like consecutively, but I spent years developing that world, developing that universe of the Eris Chronicles. And so for me, I'm like, hey, I'm going to go to a publisher now with a story because I don't have to create the world again.
Right.
Like now I just have to take a character and go back and try to tell her story.
Yeah.
And I've had, I'm telling people, I'm pitching it to different people. I did it with you, right?
Yep.
And just some friends, and it's like, I really want to read.
You're like,
this.
yeah, wait, let me get more of that.
Yeah. And so, it's just something to think about as writers. Like, how expansive
side note,
is
isn't that the worst thing ever when you're like, hey, will you critique this thing I've written here? And then the response is, oh, no, that's perfect.
Right. It's the worst.
Oh, no, that's great.
Yeah,
I've read with that. You're like, no, someone critique it. Give me something.
Give me something. I want to make it better. And so all that to say is The Witcher is a great example of that as writers.
Yeah.
Is that something we can look at and say, we don't need to copy that, but how can we create something where other people can come and play in the sandbox?
And I guess that would be the biggest takeaway. Faithful listeners, for you guys out there, if you have not delved into the Witcher universe yet, the Netflix series is a great way to do it. But again, like we said, there's a lot of violence, blood, gore, nudity. So if you're trying to avoid all that, there's the books.
Yeah, the books aren't really doesn't have as much of that.
Right,
stuff
the books you can really dive into that, and there's the video games too. The video games, every once in a while you'll come across a sex scene where there's some nudity and some titties, and you if you know what's happening, you can sort of avoid those choices because everything in the game is a choice to a degree. So, there's many ways that you can enjoy this world and this realm of The Witcher. So I would highly recommend some way, get yourself some way into it.
Yeah.
Into the world.
And as someone, just to be honest, there were definitely some unnecessary nudity and sex scenes. I mean, you didn't really need that.
Yeah, and in the Netflix series, it wouldn't be that hard to just skip those things, and you wouldn't be missing much.
You really wouldn't be missing much.
Yeah.
But at the same time, someone who's read the first book, I was kind of expecting there to be more of that sort of stuff in the book, and there's really not. Like if you read Game of Thrones, it's got sex scenes, it's got all kind of graphic stuff in the book. Yeah. But so far as I've been reading in The Witcher, it doesn't have that. It doesn't have like graphic violence and all that stuff. It's a lot more about the characters and discussions about things and even struggles of a character type nature. Yeah. And it's I've really enjoyed the book so far. And I'm just waiting to finish. I've got another book after this one I want to read. This is sci-fi. That's supposed to be really good. So I've been enjoying it. Absolutely.
So from us to you, we recommend getting into this. And as always, raise a glass to inspiration and stay inspired, guys.
Stay inspired.